Good evening. It's great to see so many people here this evening. A very warm welcome to Edge Hill University and its creative campus. And thank you for attending for what promises to be a very stimulating discussion. My name is Roger Shannon, and I'm a professor of film and television here at the university in the Department of Media. Now, our department moved into this wonderful new building only a few months ago, and this event is the first of its kind for what we hope to be an ongoing series of discussions and forums about the arts, the media and creativity. But it gives me great delight that the event this evening is all about the Unforgotten Coat. What a marvellous act of creativity this book is, drawing on the best of storytelling in words and images. And I'd like now to say a few words about the three collaborators who put the Unforgotten Coat into our minds and into the hands of lots of great readers. That's Frank Cottrell Boyce, Clare Heney and Carl Hunter. Now, Frank's made an outstanding contribution to UK culture. He's a leading screenwriter and a champion for children's literature. His screenwriting for TV and film encompasses a range of sources, lots of great original ideas in a world of remakes and sequels. So his work stands out incredibly well. Movies like Butterfly Kiss, 24-Hour Party People, Grow Your Own, Millions, and Hilary and Jackie. In recent years, it is as a children's author that he's been most excelling, winning 2 major British awards for his children's books. His first novel, Millions, was awarded the annual Carnegie Medal for Best Children's Book in 2004, and The Unforgotten Coat received the 2012 Guardian Fiction Prize, and also the award which is on the table in front of Frank, Carl and Clare, and that award...
Go on, say it, Roger.
It's not the Glass Award, it's the Bronze Award, and it's an award that was given to them at the Frankfurt Book Fair.
Say the name.
Das Buch zum Kinderliteratur Award. And I did A-level German at Waterloo Grammar many years ago. Now, its continuing collaboration with the director Danny Boyle led to the fantastic opening ceremony at the 2012 Olympics, where Frank drew for his influences and inspiration from Humphrey Jennings' Pandemonium and Shakespeare's The Tempest. At Edge Hill University, we're delighted to welcome Frank back, as only a few months ago he was awarded an honorary doctorate from the university for his contribution to film and television and literature. Carl Hunter is a filmmaker and musician, bass player for the Liverpool band The Farm, and also a filmmaker who has worked with many, many writers and directors in Liverpool, but a colleague of mine at Edge Hill University, as is Clare Heney, who is a filmmaker and photographer, both colleagues of mine here. Now, Frank, Carl and Clare have worked together on numerous projects, including the film Accelerate, and of course, together on The Unforgotten Coat, a story about 2 Mongolian brothers who turn up at a primary school in Bootle and bring something very new to the lives of their schoolmates. To kick us off, I'd like to ask Frank to do a reading from The Unforgotten Coat before we get into a conversation about the book, and then we'll open it up to as many questions from the floor as people wish to ask. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming in such numbers. Carl in his modesty and Clare in their modesty gave me the impression there was going to be me and them, a packet of hobnobs and a couple of other people. So I'm a bit, I would definitely have put a different shirt on if I'd known you were all coming. I'm going to read a bit from the beginning of the book, which is where, I'll say a few words about the book first. This book came about in a strange way. The very first, in the week that my first novel was published, I met a woman called Sue Kendall, who was the head teacher at Joan of Arc Primary School in Bootle, and I just bumped into her in Moor Lane, and she said, "Can you come into my school?" And no one had, and that's become something I do all the time now, but it never happened to me before. And so I went into the school, and kids were sitting in a circle waiting for me to speak to them. It was just a fantastic Homeric feeling. I'd never been that. It certainly didn't happen at home. And one of the kids was this dazzling young Mongolian girl who just sort of lit up the room, and the other kids were really, really proud of her, and they told me all these great stories about her, and she was so sweet. And that girl got deported. It was really sad. And the thing that the kids got most kind of worked up about was that she had left her coat behind. So it was a true story, and she told them stories about how in Mongolia it got very cold in the winter, and this amazing image of camels with snow on top that really kind of stuck in your mind. And a few years later, Jane Davis from the Reader organisation asked me to write a book specially for the reader involving pictures. That would be a book that would be enjoyable for adults but accessible to children and have pictures. It was like a very, quite a difficult brief really. It was just, can you square this circle? And so I immediately began talking to Carl and Clare, and I'd planned this great story about the gold rush, and I had it all kind of mapped out in detail. And we took the train down to London. I was sort of going through it, and I was watching Jane kind of slightly glazing over and saying, yeah, I'm sure it'll be great. And then we started to chat. And as we were chatting, I talked about this girl, and she went, write that book. Forget about the gold rush and write that book. And I was like, well, but that's not really a book. It's not really a story. It's just something that happened. And she said, just write it. So that's where this came from. And I never thought, because the girl was a real girl, I never thought it was my right to tell her story. So although it was inspired by Miss Shield, I've turned her into two little boys in this. And in the bit that I'm gonna read out now, these two boys have just turned up in class. They've just turned up in Mrs. Spendlove's class. And the narrator, I've forgotten her name. Julie is telling the story, okay. Okay, so they're just settling down in the class. These two kids have just turned up wearing weird hats. Mrs. Spendlove said, I would like you all to say a big hello to a new face in the class. A happy new face, I hope. This is Chinggis. And everyone said hello except me. I said, what about the other one, miss? What's he called? She hadn't noticed the little one until then. Oh, Chinggis, she said, I'm afraid your little brother isn't in this class. He's in Miss Hoyle's class along the corridor. No, said Chinggis. My little brother is in this class. Look, he's here next to me. Everyone laughed except for Mrs. Spendlove. I'm sorry, she said. I mean, he belongs in Miss Hoyle's class. She was flapping her hands at the rest of us to be quiet, mortified because she thought we were laughing at him and it was her fault. But I was standing next to him and I could see he had not made a mistake. He was just digging in for a fight. Julie, will you show Chinggis' brother to Miss Hoyle's class? I certainly would. For one thing, I wanted my seat back. As soon as I stepped towards the little one, though, the big one put his hand up right in my face and said, no. Excuse me? He must stay with me. I am bound to take care of him. I must protect him. Oh, it doesn't really work like that, Chinggis. For one thing, he's in Miss Hoyle's class and she'll protect him. And besides, he won't really need protecting because we're really nice. But he wasn't even listening. He just took out some pencils and settled down to do a bit of drawing. Mrs. Spendlove opened her laptop and poked around for a while. She said, you need talking to the little one directly. You need to go to a different class. And she started trying to spell out this unbelievable name, syllable by syllable. But before she got to the third syllable, Chinggis looked up and said, no, again. It was the second time he'd said no to her. Once might be a mistake, twice was game on. We were witnessing a struggle for power. Mrs. Spendlove made the first play. Excuse me, she said. Call him Nergui, he said, it's easier. Which is definitely cheek in her face, telling Mrs. Spendlove what to do and telling her she would not be up to the job of pronouncing someone's actual name. Mrs. Spendlove slapped him down. That's not what I've got here, she said, and tried to spell out the name again. Chinggis stood up. She looked him in the eye. He said, please. Please was good. Please was a kind of stand down. Please was definitely points to Mrs. Spendlove. She closed the laptop really, really slowly. Okay, she said, just for today, you can stay in this class. Chinggis said thank you and sat back down. It looked like victory to Mrs. Spendlove, except that somehow this kid had ended up with everything he wanted. His little brother was sitting next to him, in my chair, being called by some sort of unofficial name. And maybe Mrs. Spendlove sensed this, so she decided to push it. So just take off your hat, Nergui, and we'll all get started. The kid didn't move, neither did Chinggis. They sat there with, what are you going to do about it, faces on. She said, I'm afraid you do have to take your hat off, Nergui. No, said Chinggis. And now everyone looked at Mrs. Spendlove. We can't have people wearing hats in class, Chinggis. Everyone looked at Chinggis. This was high-tension tennis. "It will be dangerous to take off my brother's hat." "How can it be dangerous to take off his hat? Is his head not securely fastened to his neck?" She got a laugh at this, and the laugh gave her edge. "Not dangerous for him, but dangerous for you." Mrs. Spendle frowned. Was he threatening her? "If I take off his hat, maybe he will go crazy." He was definitely threatening her. He was threatening all of us. He was threatening us with his little brother. "Chingis, when you need your eagle to be calm, what do you do?" "I don't know." She looked around the class. Did anyone know? Why would anyone know? "You cover its eyes with a hood. When you want your eagle to kill, you take off the hood. My brother is my eagle. With his hood on, he is calm. If I take off his hood, I don't know what he'll do." This was year 6. We'd been at school for 6 years, and until that moment, I thought I had learned everything I would ever need to learn. I knew how to work out the volume of a cube. I knew who had painted the sunflowers. I could tell you the history of St. Lucia. I knew about the lines of the Tudors and the lines of symmetry, and the importance of eating 5 portions of fruit a day. But in all that time, I had never had one single lesson in eagle calming. I had never even heard the subject mentioned. I had no idea that a person might need eagle calming skills in this life. And in that moment, I felt my own ignorance spread out behind me like a pair of wings, and every single thing I didn't know was a feather on those wings, and I could feel them tugging at the air, restless to fly. Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Eagle calm.
Eagle
What should you know?
Yeah.
Obviously, with the Mongolian brothers coming to Bootle, you've got a storyline about migration and settling and roots. But another very strong theme in your book, and with the pictures as well, is friendship and loyalty.
Yeah.
Now, were those themes of friendship and loyalty there at the beginning along with immigration and settling, or did that come out of...
I think it came out of the process, which is always the best thing, because, as I said, Jane asked me to write this book in quite a hurry, and what the reader organisation the year before, for their kind of flagship book, had chosen a book by David Almond called The Savage, which had brilliant illustrations in it by Dave McKean, who's a really famous kind of comics artist. And so they're kind of looking to team me up with someone. And I said, well, it always works better if you're working with someone you know and you're close to. So instead of kind of going off and shopping for, you know, some famous illustrator, I immediately contacted Carl and Clare, who lived close by me, and we worked on this together. So I think the story is about friendship, but it was a book that was made out of friendship and loyalty as well. And this is like a big theme with me, but I do think people work better with people that they know and love and get on with. And I'm always saying this, but like I think Stevie Wonder is colossally more talented in every way than John Lennon, but Paul McCartney did not do his best work with Stevie Wonder.
I think we'd be with you on that then.
Yeah.
But do you think that you know, the choice of literature and writing and book to kind of explore those themes was you know, as appropriate as it is? I mean, did you think of other ways of getting those stories out? Were you thinking of, you know, a film or TV drama or?
No, it was purely for, it was that really interesting brief in the reader. Could you do a book that adults would read, but kids could read, and could it have pictures in? And it came out of, it was very, because we had no time to do it. So I had kind of sketched out a story, and then Carl and Clare went and started taking photographs. And then sometimes it was really difficult to get a photograph. So the story had to change. And then sometimes you came up with brilliant photographs, and the story took a swerve to get the picture in.
Well, I think as people will agree, if you've seen the exhibition, which is upstairs, if you get a chance after this chat and the Q&A is finished, go and have a look at the exhibition, because it's got all the photographs which are in the book. But I mean, I think what's very exciting about the illustrations is the Polaroid form that are in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so, you know, it's retro for one thing.
Yeah.
It's pre-digital.
Sadly, I didn't know it was retro at the time. I was
You could
still
have
in
made
that
more of it.
Polaroid world.
Could have made more of it then.
But do you know what? Like, the thing is, if you make films, you're always transforming the place, because a location is never what it appears to be in a film. So you kind of go out and look at a location and say, oh, this'll do for a galaxy far, far away, or this looks a bit like... So like you mentioned Hilary and Jackie, and that's set in Moscow and Jerusalem, and America and Spain, and every frame of that film is shot in Liverpool.
Well, it was premiered at the Philharmonic.
Yeah, but every single frame, I mean, and I think you said, this isn't a film, this is the 60 bus route. There's one scene that's not shot in Liverpool. There's one scene that's not shot in Liverpool, and we shot it in Colomendy. It's like the only, like, it's like a colony, you know. But you are transforming the place that you live. So I've been doing that all my life, and that, like, that idea that a story about, I don't want to spoil the ending, but these two boys have loads of photographs that they claim are of Mongolia, but which turn out to all be Bootle. So it was a kind of innate challenge to Carl and Clare to make Bootle look like Mongolia. That was part of the story. But it is kind of what you've been doing. And sadly, Polaroids on films, we used to use Polaroids for continuity, that you take a picture and that would go in the script book so that you could see what people's costumes were.
I want to come on to the possibility of it being a film later, but I just want to bring Clare and Carl in here, and if they could tell us a bit about their process of getting the pictures taken, and, you know, did you take like hundreds, or were you very clear about what you wanted?
Well, we did take hundreds, yeah. If you remember, it was a couple of years ago, and it was a summer where it just rained and rained and rained. So when the sun shone, we just ran out and took pictures. And sometimes we'd be just driving home. I mean, it wasn't like we went, right, we're doing a job, and this is what we have to do, and we've planned it all. It was like we'd go and chat to Frank, mainly about lots of other things other than the book. And as we stood up to go, oh, by the way, and he'd tell us about the story as it was developing. We know what we need to do. But it's raining and it's dark and it's miserable. And then we'd be driving home from work and we'd see a fabulous scene that we think, oh, that looks like the plains of Mongolia. So, you know, we drive home, get the camera, come back, and it was raining again, you know. So it took us ages, didn't it, to get everything really. And of course, Polaroid, if you've ever used a Polaroid, you know, it's very hit and miss. You can't kind of what you think you're taking isn't necessarily what you're taking, and sometimes that's a fabulous thing because you get a lovely image, and sometimes it's like, oh, that's not what we're looking for. So to some extent it was predetermined, we needed to get certain things, and sometimes it was like, okay, here's a little bit of a kind of abstract image, let's incorporate that into the story.
It was a bit like working with an actor in a way. When you work with an actor on a film, you have to whatever they read, you don't want them to read, you want it to be believable, you feel like they're in the moment, whatever it is they're saying is convincing. And we had the kind of the same problem with those photographs, so it was a bit like working with actors, except they were thinner than me, which is extraordinary, and about this big. And it was that kind of problem, so in some ways it's a bit like being a director, except with photographs. But when I say a problem, problems have kind of connotations with being negative or unhappy, but that isn't true in our case. I saw lots of parts of Bootle, although I'm born in Bootle, lived in Bootle, bits I'd never seen before, which is odd. And I've never seen Norton's scrapyard look so magnificent all of a sudden. But it was about the two Mongolian boys in the story. They've got eyes which aren't used to the area that they currently live in, so they do see it possibly as slightly magical. They definitely see it as different. But as a 48-year-old pair of eyes, I'm quite jaded by what I see. So what me and Clare had to do was look at the world that we knew really well, but look at it very differently. Kind of look at a reality, but a different reality. And that was kind of, I said, going back to the word problem. And that's what we were doing. But it was good fun.
It was a creative adventure, you know. We knew that we had to create a world for Chinggis and Nergu. They had to create that world. They had to develop an identity to basically save themselves from getting their heads kicked in. You know, they were in a new world, you know, and they learned, well, Chinggis makes Nergu learn to play football because he knows that that's going to save them, you know. But also they had to do it, they invented this magical, amazing, fantastical world so that they could tell the other children what an amazing place they came from. So, you know, because that was survival, they were surviving. So we had to be sort of become Chingu and Nergu and go out and take these photographs and make, you know, Merseyside look like Mongolia. So we had to do some research.
There's a line in the book, isn't there, where she says she was sure, because she kind of goes, they kind of hide where they live. They don't want her to know where they actually live. And she's got this vision of them having like a yurt on the top of Hawthorne Road somewhere, and with a samovar on the go, and some ponies outside. And she says she was sure that Xanadu, because Xanadu is in Mongolia, Xanadu was hidden somewhere in the heart of Bootle. And that's what creativity is, isn't it? That waking up the Xanadu that's in the heart of Bootle. There's a great line in Rilke that is like the the motto for this, where he says that if you think your world's not poetic enough, that's because you haven't woken it up. You know, you need to go and wake it up.
But the lovely thing about the use of Polaroids by the Mongolian brothers is that it's that gift that they leave to their schoolmates.
Yeah.
Because they realise that afterwards about the images and the fact that the unfamiliar is actually on their doorstep.
Yeah, no.
And
yeah,
that their familiarity is actually
Exactly.
something quite magical.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
magic realism in a way.
Yeah.
And that's a gift that they leave with them.
Yeah.
I think that's a great literary trick. That, well, not trick, but...
Well, I think it's partly because we worked together on it and we became kind of obsessed with the process. And we forgot that there was like a really emotional story in this that is carrying it. Because we were in such a hurry and kind of so absorbed in the pragmatics of it, I didn't realise that it was such an emotional story, and that's what's made it have this resonance. Until it did win the Guardian Prize, and you get taken out to lunch and get this big, long interview, and by someone who's quite notorious for kind of stitching you up. And she said, so she did all the routine questions, so where'd you get the idea from? And I started to tell this is a terrible thing. I don't know if I've told you this. But so we're sitting in this nice little restaurant with this young Guardian journalist with her, machete hidden up her sleeve. And sitting there, and I had other things on my mind. And she said, where'd you get the story from? And I started to tell the story that I've just told you, that I met Miss Sheila in this school, and she was enchanting. And then, one day the kids came in and there was just a coat. I completely lost it. I started to cry in this nice little Soho restaurant, and but I don't mean like kind of Gwyneth Paltrow, trickling decorative. I mean proper tears involving mucus, and it's like it all just sort of like the whole kind of sledgehammer of the story. Just I hadn't had time to think about it, and it was like Tony Soprano and the Ducks. It was just like she was like, "Are you all right?" I was going, "Yeah, it's fine. She's gone. She's gone. No one knows where she is."
What was the article like that she wrote?
She's very, very flattering
Did
article.
you get a good review out of it?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, yeah. It's like Bob Monkhouse said: if you can fake sincerity, you've.
The thing about learning to look, I think, is something we all do. We all do really well. But as we get older, I think we kind of lose that trick of learning to look again. In fact, when we made Grow Your Own, a film that we all worked on some time ago, is you summed it up, I think, in a brilliant line, which was a film made about refugees who had allotments in Liverpool, and you said it's an international story on your doorstep.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was. But it's that thing of like, there's, with a few meters in front of me, this incredible world. And I think sometimes we become blind and blasé. Life becomes wallpaper. And I think one of the nice things about filmmaking and working with a writer like Frank, which is a lovely thing to do, is it kind of ceases being wallpaper. Every crack, every crevice becomes an interest again.
Yeah.
I think it's a childlike thing, and we lose that childlikeness as we get older. So I say, recapture childlike. He says, hang up that bottle of beans.
I think I'm going to open it wider now so that you get the chance to put a question to Frank, Carl or Claire about their book, The Unforgotten Coat. Now, there are two microphones in the hall, one on each aisle, and so there's one here to start with, at the very front.
Yeah, I'm really impressed that the Daily Mail has the quote on the cover of
Oh no, yeah.
And so, because I can't imagine a book from you three that the Daily Mail would like. And so I'm interested in the politics of the book and how you did a story, just like Grow Your Own, how you did a story about immigration that I'm sure is as anti the current policy as one could imagine, and yet the Daily Mail don't notice it.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying, when we made Grow Your Own, one of the kind of things that we talked about was, wouldn't it be great to make a film that really wound the Daily Mail up? And they gave us a good review. Yeah. I'm not sure what to answer that.
Yeah, we just did something that failed. Yeah, we're just annoying the wrong people.
Maybe you didn't watch the film or read the book.
Well, I just think Frank's writing is so warm, you know, and humane. And
They don't know they've been cut in half, so they try to walk away.
You know, it's like the Trojan horse, isn't it? You know, it's like they're such human, beautiful, amusing, warm stories that perhaps, yeah, they're not intelligent enough to work out what the subterfuge is.
That question here? Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you, or thanks to all three of you for the collaboration. But as an artist myself, I'm interested in how does it work? Like, you mentioned that at some point the photography led you, and at some point the dialogue led them. And also, I'm quite interested in the fact that somebody else, there was a real life story that you came from.
Yeah.
Could you speak more into the experience of working to collaborating in that way?
I think it was the fact that we were, I think it is that loyalty thing that you test each other out and you push each other that bit more, and you can rely on each other that bit more. Roger mentioned the Olympic opening ceremony before, which had this amazing music in it by Rick Smith. And I always think, like, why, like, leaving myself out of the picture, Danny could have asked anybody to be involved in that. You know, he could have asked Andrew Lloyd Webber or Gorecki or whoever you want to do that music. And he asked Rick, whose biggest hit till that point had been Lager Lager Shout Shout, would you write a percussion concerto for Dame Evelyn Glennie? And he just went, yeah, all right. But it's just like, you say yeah, all right to your mates, don't you? Yeah. That if, you know, it's not the most, it's not when you're working for prestige or for the money that you get your best out of yourself. This was done so quickly, this book, and it's gone everywhere and it's won all these prizes, and it was just a bit of a kick, bollock and scramble between us three, really, wasn't it? And nobody saw it till it was done, and by the time it was done, it was too late for anyone to say anything about it. There was a strategic late delivery, wasn't it?
When you say quickly, how quickly? Because you keep saying quickly.
I would be embarrassed to tell you how quickly.
No, I want to know how quickly.
It's sort of mortifying how quick it... Well, it was really quick. I mean, it was very quick.
Yeah.
Go on.
It was nearly all day, wasn't it? We were...
In boiled eggs.
That long?
You two were up all night, I think.
Okay, good. Hands, put your hand up to get a question and then wait for the mic. Okay, one here, yeah.
John Hodge.
You see, it was much more spiral scratch than topographic ocean.
Yeah.
You mentioned magic realism, and I'm wondering, I know that Carl's influenced by Victoria De Sica and things like that. I think this follows in a similar tradition. It's got you there.
Ooh.
It just came so directly from a real person. Yeah. And there's a thread in it, which is that they claim they're being traced by a demon that's got a kind of magical side to it, which sort of turns out to be sort of true. Yeah, a real demon. So it's that kind of playing. It's just about, you know, in the end they're telling stories, aren't they? So it's about storytelling.
The Seeker's work is basically quite gritty. The end bits.
And then you get to the end and everyone flies off on a broomstick. Yeah. No, I mean, we both love Miracle in Milan, don't we? And, yeah.
Well, all neo-realist movements in Italian film, I'm certainly a fan of anyway, but the thing about those films is that they are optimistic. I think, again, conversations that we've all had over years is when films are made about people who are on the fringes of society, in particular the poor, is they're always pessimistic. And the people who want to make pessimistic films about the poor tend to not come from that world in the first place. And you know, I'd like to think of myself anyway as an optimist. And I think if you're going to make a film about a world which is unfortunate or on the fringes or whatever, then I always think you should always approach that with optimism, that there is a way things can be solved, rather than the angle of pessimism. But again, this is a conversation we've had in the past, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Pessimism versus optimism.
Okay. One here. And then let's have some from this side of the hall. We seem to be, this side.
Hi Frank, I'm just wondering, as someone who's interested in writing screenplays, I'm just wondering in your mind if there is any difference in the creative process in writing a screenplay and writing a novel. I mean, is there any difference in writing characters in that regard?
I mean, there's loads of sort of technical differences, obviously, and the big difference if you're writing a screenplay is that some bugger rings you up nearly every day and goes, how's it going? And you go, it's great. It's nearly there. Whereas you're writing a book, nobody ever rings you, and you kind of just, your working day shrinks and shrinks and shrinks because nobody's hounding you. That's like the big difference. But like one kind of process is sort of emerging for me, which is that you two made this beautiful scrapbook for this before we started like a mood board thing without that much about the story, just a kind of vague idea of the story. And that's pretty much what we did for the opening ceremony. We just had a huge wall that we just kept sticking things we liked on, and then patterns started to emerge and you start to take them down. And that's become my process now. I don't write a treatment anymore, but I will do like a topic book.
You can't say that.
Oh right, sorry. But that, you said about being a kid. When I was in primary school, in what is now called Year 6, we used to do these things called topics, where you'd be given like a little scrapbook, and it would be like, you do the I, or you do the final alcoholic years of Ernest Hemingway, or whatever. And it's like, and you'd fill it up with pictures and quotes and just the bits that interested you and no connective tissue, and that's sort of what your brilliant scrapbook was, and that's sort of what that wall in the Olympics was. And the thing that I'm working on now, I've just done that for and submitted that instead of a treatment, and everyone was really thrilled with that. So it's like, it's like kind of what you're aiming for, and it's sort of your job to make it stand up and walk, but to have like a vision of what it could be, and where you're drawing it from. And your scrapbook was fantastic. Do you know what I've remembered from it as well? Because the scrapbook was these brilliant photographs of Mongolia and also great pictures of. Oh, is it? Right. It was just gorgeous. But one thing I remember is that because Mongolia, people are still quite nomadic. So you had portable jails. Oh, yeah. It was like a big suitcase that you lock someone in. And I really wanted this in the story. And we never did because we couldn't get around to health and safety issues and CRB. If you got a CRB check, it would mean that you weren't the kind of person who wanted to lock a child in a suitcase. But it just looked, this like amazing picture. It might pop up. Yeah.
Okay, who's next? Someone from this side of the hall? Because we've been... here we are. Come down here. And can I have some more hands up so we can line up the next one?
Hello. I'd just like to know whether you know what happened to the girl after she was deported.
Right, that's great.
And if there's a story there.
Well, I hope there is. Because when it first... The first thing I thought of doing with that story when Michelle went was that we were going to make a documentary and take her coat back and find her, and then we never financially or emotionally in the position to do that. And then, so that's what the book came out of. And really, really strangely, Sue Kendall, who was the head teacher who invited me to the school, when the book won the first thing it won, which was The Guardian, she got a phone call from Michelle. Just a completely... Because the last... maybe I'm going to tear up again. The last we heard of Michelle was that they were taken away in the middle of the night, which I don't think can happen anymore. And Michelle rang Sue, and it was like going on to midnight, and she was saying to her, "They're taking us away. I just wanted to say goodbye before we go." Blah blah. And Sue could hear someone in the background shouting, "Take the phone off the kid." So it was really like a Gestapo type thing, and it was really shattering. And so that was the last we heard of her. And then she rang Sue, completely out of the blue, and said, "We are all right." She said, "We are all right. I cry every day. I practice my English." And that was kind of about it. And Sue had sort of contact details, so we know she's all right, but it never worked, just ringing her back the other way. And we've not heard anything from her since, but we know she's all right.
That's good.
There's one right at the very back. Roy.
Carl, Clare, can you talk a little bit more about the process of the photographs? Because we're seeing some of them, and obviously we've seen the book, and obviously lots of work went into them, and I don't know how you got those images.
Do you want to
Every one of them, please.
start?
Well, yeah, mainly driving around and going, that looks like the plains of Mongolia or whatever. And
I'll throw another question. And which are the ones that you're most, are the biggest achievements? Which are the ones that you think you have got something that you wouldn't have seen?
Well, the
Looking
metal
at the screen.
mountains. There's a part in the story where the Mongolian children talk about the metal mountains, these magical metal mountains. We would... Actually, Frank suggested originally. He said, have you ever driven down the Dock Road and seen Norton's for scrap, which conveniently looks like Norton's crap. Well, Norton's how you drive down the road. And he pointed it out, and we went there and got chased, well, kind of eyed up by the security there. But after a number of photographs, Polaroids are a great format, but very, very hit and miss. And for the 24, I think, that are in the book, we've got at least, must be 400 that didn't work. So the ratio is terrible.
Yeah, there's bin bags full, isn't there?
Yeah, it's a really expensive ratio to go through. But the mountains, for instance, the metal mountains, which you may have seen a few moments ago up there, is these piles of kind of minced up cars that have been spewed up. Oh, in fact, there's the ones that didn't work. Some of them. So yeah, so the Nortons for scrap became the metal mountains. There's a couple of images where there's a shot of an eagle on an arm. We didn't have an eagle. We couldn't find an eagle.
In a hurry.
So we had to draw one on the back of a piece of cardboard, black cardboard, cut it out, and then pop down to Seaforth or Waterloo.
Make a show of ourselves on the beach.
In fact, one of our
I said, please, Carl, let's go up the coast where it's really quiet. Because, you know, because it was this really, really horrible, miserable summer. And if the sun came out, the people came out. And the sun came out and Carl goes, let's go down to Crosby Beach and take this picture. I was going, please, can we go up to Ainsdale? There'll be nobody there. And he was going, yeah, I don't care. And I was going, please, Carl. And so just as Carl was standing there with a coat hanging off his arm and this cardboard cut out of an eagle, and I'm taking a picture of it, how insane it must have looked. Loads of people went, oh, all right, what are you doing? Oh, explain that one. Yeah.
Like Gary Westhead, who we work with, Gary's here, but the last person I expected to see while we were taking this photograph was Gary, who we work with, and he appeared like Mr. Ben, out of nowhere. So the eagle, there's an oeuvre, by the way, have you, for those who read the book, there's this wonderful, it's a horse's head or skull, which is placed on a stick on a pile of rocks, and you walk around it clockwise 3 times, it'll wear off evil spirits. We thought that'd be a great image to have a Polaroid of. We didn't have an oeuvre, so we had to create one. Sticks are easy, rocks are easy, horses' skulls slightly more difficult. But eBay, you can buy anything on eBay.
It was made of rubber.
Question right at the back.
Hi, Claire, Carl. I remember you starting this project. It is absolutely fantastic, and I know both of you put your heart and soul into everything you do. You know, and I'm really pleased this one worked out so well. But did you imagine when you started the project it would ever get so big?
No, it's hard to know. I mean, I don't think we ever thought of it as anything other than taking some pictures for Frank's book, you know.
I just thought it was getting Jane off my back.
Yeah, you know, it was for this project, the Reader Project, which is a fantastic organisation, charitable organisation, that brings the benefits of being read to, you know, if they go into hospitals, jails.
Yeah, and they gave away like 50,000 free copies. So you knew you weren't going to get any money.
Yeah, it certainly was never about money, was it? You know, it was about this project and just kind of knowing that it was such a good cause. You know, it's about tolerance. You know,
it did feel as though it was going to slip onto the radar and going to be fun in Liverpool. And then it is kind of amazing that it's been picked up. The Guardian Prize is a big. I mean, the person who lost that night was Roddy Doyle. So like that idea that stitch that Roddy, that it's a terrible, terrible moment. Were you there that? Because he came to the party,
I was there.
And this is so awful, but you know when you win a prize, they probably tell you that you've won. So I thought, he probably knows he hasn't won. I didn't even think that, I just went, Roddy Doyle, wow, so good of you to come. And he went, well, I'm nominated. I was going, yeah, you are, aren't you? Good luck, maybe, because we knew he'd won, and we brought loads of people with us. We brought Sue Kendall, and there was like 10 of us on the stage collecting that award, but that was so weird, you know, that
like
so
a
we beat Roddy Doyle, you know,
invasion.
that's pretty great. And then for this thing, the German publisher also didn't expect me. For this is Eloise who came with me, thinking it was all going to be glamorous and they were going to be sending a limo, but they sent us a bus timetable. And I thought, well, we clearly haven't won because they sent us a bus timetable. So I had this shirt on again, and we just had like a day, didn't we? It was a nice day. But then the award ceremony, oh, it's a great ceremony, it's a very important prize, very good ceremony, 3 hours long. It's like, oh God. And we sat there in this sort of coma of 3 hours of government speech, because it's a state prize. The government minister comes and gives you that prize, and also the top German boy band came and performed, and 3,000 girls were screaming, and then the prize was announced. And we were practically comatose, weren't we, Eloise? And then my name was read out, and I went, oh. And my publisher went, what? And she took us, and she kept saying, we are so shocked. We are so shocked you won. And they kept saying, they said, it's a very big prize, which we thought meant there's going to be a massive check. But it was just that, you can't check it in as hand baggage, even though they flew you out Ryanair, so you had to be checked in.
We got it was sent to our house. Frank was over in Germany. He picked one of those statues, and 2 were sent to our house separately. And the poor old postman knocked on our door on a Monday. Sign for that, and then on the Tuesday. So I was like, I ordered a washing machine.
We're at the point now where I think it's time for a second reading from Frank, and then after that we've got time for 2, possibly 3 more questions before we have to close. But
So
second reading.
I'm just going to read a bit from towards the end, and we'll end with being read to. I think everyone loves being read to. I went to a school in Glasgow last year, and you know like some schools are like, you know, Beacon School for Science or Maths, which is obviously the Glasgow, Strathclyde area Beacon School Centre of Excellence for Testosterone. It was like the biggest lads that you've ever seen all in one place. And I read a story up to a point where it got quite exciting. I said, have you got any questions? And the first one went, what happens next? And I said, well, I'm here to encourage you to read for yourselves, and the book is in the library. Get it out, read it with a friend, get your teacher to read it. I'm glad you want to know, but you know, and what's the next question? And another big lad put his hand up and went, could you read a bit more? And I went, well, I'm here to encourage you to read for yourself. The book's in the library. I'm glad you want to, so get it out, read it with a friend, read it with a teacher. And any more? And there was a boy at the back who was like the biggest mammal you'd ever seen. He put his, he's like a postal district with arms, and he put his hand up, and like the weather changed when he put his hand up. And he went, and I said to him, what's your question? And he went, did you just read, wee man? So I'll just read. Julia is appointed to be the kind of buddy in the school for these 2 boys. She's sort of their guide. They call her their good guide. Until Chinggis came, I had mostly spent playtime. I should make sure that I'm reading the right bit. Oh, yeah, okay. Until Chinggis came, I had mostly spent playtime with Mimi, walking up and down beside the railings, talking about the inevitable future success of our imaginary girl band, the Surfing Eskimos. Until I took on good guide duties, I had no idea there was a small tribe of sad year 5s who more or less lived in the clump of trees which had been planted to hide the bins. They spent their time on their DSs, avoiding Shockey and Duncan. I had no idea that Mrs. Harrison spoke French because she was from the Congo. I did not know that there were frogs in the big clump of nettles between the playground and the car park, and I had not known there were hula hoops in the outdoor play box. Chinggis took one and asked me what it was. I put it over my head and tried to spin it round my waist, but it just clattered straight onto the floor. Oh, she said, it's a hula hoop. Oh, he said, it's a hula hoop. You do like this. He took it off me, dropped it over his head, and barely moving his hips made it spin like a blender. He could carry on walking and talking at the same time, Nergui too. Mrs. Harrison laughed and said, you don't often see boys do that. Chinggis stood still. The hoop dropped to the floor. He looked around the playground. This place is nothing but girls. Where are the boys? Well, this is the red playground, and that's for anyone, but if you play football, you have to go onto the blue playground, and that's through there, and all the boys play football. Chinggis led Nergui through the little gap between the dining hall and the porter cabin, and I followed. The 2 of them stood there for the rest of the break, watching the boys charging up and down the blue playground, yelling and pointing and chasing the ball. Chinggis said, does this have rules? I said, I think so. You need to find them out. We have to play this. Okay. So the 2 of them came back to ours and made me explain the rules of football. I had to borrow a ball from the boy next door, and in the end, I had to borrow the boy next door too. He was called Jordan. He couldn't understand why they didn't already know how to play. I said, they're from Mongolia. Even so, they must have footy. They have footy everywhere. Not in Mongolia. No, said Chinggis. Mongolia is just horses, horses, horses. If you want to play with a ball, you get on a horse first. If you want to throw something or shoot something, get on a horse. If you want to hunt, go on a horse. If you get married, put your bride on a horse. The only exception is wrestling. Wrestling is on the ground. Jordan had heard of countries that had had floods and disease and civil war, but he had never heard of anywhere so abject it had no football. He was in tears. He taught them the skills, the rules, the tricks, and after that sat on the pavement and told them the entire history of Liverpool Football Club. Chinggis said, football is as much about talking as it is about playing. From then on, Chinggis spent the little playtime trying to get me to talk to him about the offside rule, the transfer window, and the history of the Champions League. He wouldn't play though. He made Nergui play and took me to watch him. He'd point to him running up and down, barging into people and say, on the ball he's a bit of a donkey, but off the ball he's a real workhorse. So even when he was talking about football, he was still quite horsey in his thinking.
We've got time for one last question before we have to come to a close, but just here in the red.
Can you tell me where and how you made the yurt?
Very good question.
It's in Rydal Hall in the Lake District. It's
That's the one.
there's another experience where we went, that looks like it could be in Mongolia. Yeah, Rydal Hall in the Lake District, which is between Ambleside and Grasmere. There's I mean they're popping up everywhere now. It's kind of, holiday destinations. But yeah, that's where it's from. But what happened was, when we went to see them, and we went, great, they look exactly like Mongolian yurts, and we spoke to the people who own them, and they said, yeah, they import them from Mongolia. And when we went back to take the photographs, they'd all turned green. We were like, oh, they're supposed to be white. But all the covers apparently had been ripped in the wind, so they'd replaced them with green covers. But that's why they're green and not white.
Okay.
Like typical Mongolian yurt.